Hey guys, this is Connor with Doc Waterloo, and today I want to update the car analogy, the car to human body analogy that gets used so frequently in clinics. If you haven't heard of the analogy before, it's typically related to an injury of some sort. A patient or a practitioner um, will elaborate on an injury by saying, it's kind of like how a car blows apart or how a car blows a tire or something like that. You have to repair the tire, you have to repair the part, and send you back on your way so that you can go about doing your thing just as you were before. And that's the extent of your injury. And while that is really convenient from a mechanical perspective, it's woefully inaccurate. It ignores one of the most important parts about being a human being compared to being a car, which is that we are adaptive machines, and cars are not adaptive machines. So as you can see in my illustrations here, at the top of the board we have your average car on the road today. It's on its own spectrum there because it doesn't change one way or the other. The environment does not affect this car. Maybe it rusts out parts, maybe parts experience wear and tear and then go and need replacing. It doesn't change the car. The car's capacity stay the same. The wheels are always the same wheels. The horsepower is always the same horsepower. It doesn't change positively or negatively depending on what we do with it. Unless you're really hard on your cars and then they don't last that long, but that's neither here nor there. So if we make this car analogy more useful, we have to make the car in the analogy an adaptive machine like the human body, and that's this next spectrum down here. So on one end of the spectrum we have a shopping cart, and on the other end we have a monster truck. If we all start out somewhere in between with a car with average capacity, um, average features, average amount of horsepower, average braking ability, average volume in the stereo, that kind of thing, we can go one way or the other way with this. But the human body is always adapting to the environment. You either adapt negatively or you're adapting positively, or you're changing in some way, whether you know it or not. So if we start out with our pretty average car and we do nothing with it, all we ever do is take that car to the grocery store, drive that car 5 minutes to work. We never push the horsepower on it. We never require it to go off-road. We never push the volume on the stereo, that kind of stuff. It doesn't need those things. That's how adaptation works. If you don't need something, if you don't need one of the qualities that you have, then you can lose it. So you eventually become a shopping cart. However, if this adaptive machine ever existed and we were pushing it, we drove it to its limit all the time, and we took it off road, and we were blasting the stereo all the time, you'd end up with a monster truck because you're stressing it in ways that are going to force it to adapt, or the organism won't make it. So to relate this back to being a human being, we all start out life with a body with fairly average capacities. We have a certain amount of mobility, a certain amount of strength, a certain amount of conditioning. Um, if you don't stress any of those things, if you stop using them, if you get a sedentary sit down at your desk job and you have a sedentary lifestyle and you never work on building those capacities, you don't go to the gym and train these things, you don't exercise in a directed way, you become this guy over here who's clutching his cell phone, but is clearly he has some back pain because he's souped over, and I've drawn a red pain bubble around his low back, so he has back pain. You become that guy. He's useless. He can't do anything. Just holding up his cell phone is hurting his back. So you ask that guy to help you move, and he's going to spontaneously combust or something. You ask that guy to run 5 flights of stairs, that's dangerous for him. You ask that guy to touch his toes, he's going to be hurting for a week. We start out average, and we train to get better. We train to have more conditioning. We train to have more strength, more mobility. We push the limits of our body gently. You don't have to go all out all the time. You don't have to be crazy. If you just push what you can do right now and try to expand on that a little bit, He'll become the guy with the massive barbell over his head who also has hair and fingers that the other guy doesn't have. Lots of positive adaptations there. But this guy can do whatever he wants. He can pick up any box off the floor. He can tie his shoes. He can put on his socks safely. He can walk up the stairs without pain. He can do whatever he wants because he's put in the work to achieve those positive adaptations. He's made his adaptive machine capable of doing something stressful and surviving. The guy on the opposite side of the spectrum hasn't. The guy on the opposite side of the spectrum is frail, and this guy's durable. So if we want to use the car analogy, we have to recognize that it doesn't take into account the ability to adapt. And when you don't take into account the ability to adapt as a human being, you're ignoring the fact that you play a big role in whether or not you get hurt down the road, or whether or not you experience pain, or whether or not you climb the stairs without huffing and puffing. And that may be the most important part of this new analogy. So consider using the new and improved version from now on.